As House Democrats continue their impeachment inquiry into President Trump, Senator Lindsey Graham is issuing a stark warning. Let's take a listen.
And I'm going to ask my colleagues in the Senate, Republicans, to sign a letter to Nancy Pelosi saying we do not believe the transcript of the phone call between the president and the Ukraine is an impeachable offense. They're about to destroy the nation for no good reason. I've read the transcript. I do not see anything wrong there, and I want Nancy Pelosi to know that Republican senators are not going to impeach this president based on this transcript, so she can stop now before she destroys the country.
This comes just one day after the South Carolina senator announced on Twitter plans to invite the president's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, to testify about the Ukraine scandal before the Senate Judiciary Committee. Giuliani refused to appear before the House, but says he's considering Chairman Graham's offer. Mayor Giuliani joins me now to discuss the Ukraine controversy. Welcome to Rising Sirs. Great to have you back here.
Oh, nice to be with you.
Absolutely. So are you going to be testifying before Lindsey Graham? You said you thought about it.
Well,
have you made up
let's
your
take
mind?
them one at a time. So
Yeah.
with regard to the House, I will not respond to the. I didn't get a subpoena. I've gotten a letter. They haven't gotten to the stage of a subpoena. If they cure some of the problems or all of the problems, then it might be different. But then I have to take up attorney-client privilege. So I have all the concerns that Pat Cipollone raised in his letter, which I think is an excellent legal brief as to why it's a totally illegitimate rump committee. I actually believe it should be paid for by the Democratic National Committee and not our funds. Well, it's a political exercise. It's like if the president gets criticized if he goes have a rally and he uses funds. This is a rally for president. I mean, you'd have to be a fool not to see that this is a completely partisan political exercise. And I think it's defrauding the taxpayers to use money for it. But in any event, unless they cure it, I won't even get to the question of attorney-client privilege.
So what does a cure mean? You said that to cure some of the
Well,
problems.
how about they either vote impeachment, which automatically gives the Republicans subpoena power, or give them subpoena power. If they don't want to vote impeachment, then give them the rights that you would have, because they're depriving him completely of any due process. And the Supreme Court of the United States has held in 2 cases that even if it's a congressional hearing, you can't violate due process.
Okay.
In other words, they can't do any freak show they want to do or crowd or circus they want to do like they're doing. Just think of what they're doing. They're depriving him of every basic right that we have. First of all, he's not allowed to cross-examine anybody. He can't point out how, for example, the secret whistler had a professional relationship with one of his opponents. We don't even know what that.
Do we know the opponent is? Have you heard?
No, because everything is in secret. Adam Schiff is hiding it. Also, why wasn't this brought out at the beginning? Maybe if the IG knew it, or if the IG knew that the whistler was talking to Schiff's staff before the IG, maybe the IG wouldn't have concluded so quickly that the whistler is credible. I mean, I wouldn't if they were hanging around with Schiff before, particularly since Schiff lied about it.
Okay.
And the whistler didn't disclose it to the IG. Sounds like he's trying to hide it. We can't examine these facts because they're hiding the witness.
So what you're saying is...
And they're lying about what the witness is saying.
If there's an impeachment vote and Republicans have subpoena power, then you might be willing to cooperate.
Then I would sit down with my client and with the other lawyers, and we discuss attorney-client privilege. I'm also not going to be bullied by them with, we'll hold you in contempt if you don't comply. When do they ever hold a lawyer in contempt for asserting the attorney-client privilege? I could be representing a terrorist, and they'd respect that.
Yeah.
But I'm representing the guy they're trying to frame, so they're trying to frame him, and they've got about 20 reporters trying to go into my divorce. We'll give you an idea of what scoundrels they are. If you take these people in Washington seriously, you're going to get very warped yourself as a person of conscience and integrity.
So, Mr. Mayor, about the original question, are you going to testify to Senator Graham?
That's a decision I've got to make with my client over the course of the next week or so.
Okay. And so then let's talk about some of the State Department people. I know that you said from the very beginning that some people within the State Department tipped you off to some of this and asked you to go over to Ukraine, other than Kurt Volker. Who are some of those officials? Are you willing to talk about that?
No.
Okay.
The only person who... there are 2 stages.
Yes.
I did my investigation from November of 2018 to March of 2018. The reason that's important is all this stuff about us trying to collect dirt on the presidential candidate is dirt, garbage, total Democratic lying smid. I finished my investigation before Joe Biden was even a candidate for president. I began it 7 months before he was a candidate. I began it because Ukrainians came to me and gave me information that they said the FBI wouldn't take and the Justice Department wouldn't take. They didn't trust the FBI. They didn't trust the Department of Justice. They said, I'll give it to you because we trust you because of your reputation and what you've done in Ukraine. And because we believe you have the best interests of the president at heart, and he's being framed. What they're saying happened in Russia actually happened in Ukraine. And of course I would take that information. That completely exonerates my client. Remember, he was still under investigation by Mueller in November of 2018.
Yes.
Mueller didn't conclude until late March. Every moment that I was spending on this, he was under jeopardy from Mueller lying about him, which he did anyway, but not about this. I was collecting this information to rebut anything Mueller might say about collusion. I not only collected it, I corroborated it. Unlike the Shifty Schiff, I actually got sworn statements. I got witnesses who were willing to come forward. I have witnesses that are not going to hide behind a curtain and testify as if it's a trial in the Soviet Union. They're all there. I completed it in March before Mueller was finished, ready to go. I put it out publicly because I couldn't go to the FBI and I couldn't go to the Department of Justice because my witnesses didn't trust them. And frankly, I didn't trust them.
Okay. So one question I think
and I gave it all to reporters, and the only one who ferociously and bravely followed it was John Solomon. And by the way, he knew more about it than I did when I first approached him.
So one of the questions that many people have on this is why you trusted those Ukrainians in the first place. I mean, it seems to me that they're all have an agenda, they're all particularly shady and
why do you say I trusted
country. Well, I mean, they came to you.
Why do you think I investigated?
Yeah.
I mean, I could have done what Schiff did.
Okay.
I could take a hearsay statement from a guy who's a professional, has a professional relationship with the Democrats, is a partisan Democrat, and I could paint it as if it's true. When they first told me, I had no idea it was true. I'm a prosecutor.
So that was the other question.
I went and I interviewed numerous other people. I collected documents. I found on the area of collusion, I found two things. I found a decision by the Ukrainian court that already decided it. It's never reported in the United States because we cover up for Democrats. And what it said was that two specific Ukrainian officials illegally delivered information to hurt one of the candidates in the 2016 election and to help the other, and probably in exchange for money. And that was Hillary Clinton. I said to myself, even the cover-up American press, who covered up Hillary's breaking up servers and cell phones and 33,000 emails, which is about as overwhelming a case of obstruction of justice you're ever going to find, even though they covered that up for her, they can't cover up actually a finding of the court. Well, they actually are trying to do that. I also found a couple of very, very incriminating documents that make it clear that operatives of the Democratic National Committee were working actively with Ukrainians to dig up dirty information on Trump and the Trump campaign. Nobody told me that. I saw the wires.
Is there anything new that you can reveal to us about that investigation?
When I want to.
About the 2016 investigation?
When I want to, a little bit at a time. The more they screw up, the more opportunity I have to get it out.
So you have more information that you're going to put out there.
And you know why I don't put it out? Because if I put it out, the corrupt media will try to change it, ignore it. So I wait for an opportunity where I can contradict them.
Okay.
And then I put it out. Like, for example, this is totally lies. How often have you heard that the allegations about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden have been debunked? Have you ever asked to see the report? Have you seen a report? How could they have been debunked when they never investigated? How often have you heard Joe Biden and his cronies, people involved maybe in the corruption with him, saying, oh, you know, there's no real evidence of wrongdoing here. In fact, there's no support for the charges. There's an affidavit that's been on the public record for 2 weeks. I gave it to CBS on a Sunday morning. It's the affidavit of Shokin.
Yes.
Under oath. Quote, I was told by the president of the Ukraine numerous times, you're going to be fired if you don't stop investigating Hunter Biden. And you are being fired because the vice president wants you out because you're investigating his son. That's called a direct witness. He'd be the first witness in a bribery trial or a RICO trial because he tells the whole story.
Do you think he's trustworthy?
Only because I have 3 other witnesses who support what he's saying, only because it makes logical sense.
Okay.
Isn't it logical that Joe Biden, who allowed his son to remain in this corrupt relationship for 3 years, even though he was called out by the New York Times for how corrupt and unseemly it looked, isn't it logical that if his son got in trouble, he knew it? Isn't it also logical that he realized that one of the side benefits of getting the prosecutor dismissed was getting the son off the hook? And suppose I told you I had more evidence than that.
Okay, well,
that links him to it. There's not a serious person with an intellect above 100 IQ that hasn't figured out that Biden was fixing that case to get Sonny Boy out of an issue and a problem he never should have had him in. When he should have pulled the kid out is in December of 2015, when the New York Times wrote a scathing article, very unusual for the Times to criticize any of the chosen. Those are Obama, Hillary, and him. They say, terrible conflict. It looks awful. Biden has been sent by Obama to do two things in Ukraine: give out billions and lecture them on corruption.
Right.
And he's set up in a relationship that, at least on the face of it, looks terribly corrupt, because he's given billions to the Ukraine and they're giving millions to his son. Any ethical president, which Obama wasn't, would have called Biden in and said, Mr. Vice President, what are you doing to me? You know how this looks? You're going to go there and lecture them on corruption? You know what they're going to do? They're going to laugh at you. They're going to laugh at America. They're going to say we're just as corrupt as they are, which in fact they have been saying for 4 years, which is one of the reasons why the President of the United States has to take it into his own hands and clean up the horrible, disgusting corruption created by the Obama administration.
So in this vein,
and why are the
Mr.
Democrats
Mayor,
doing this?
Yeah.
Because they know if we open this up, it's not the only one. It's not the only pay-for-play scheme. We're going to move to China, and then we're going to move to the United States, and they're now investigating Romania.
What's in Romania? So that's something you're saving.
I can't tell you what's in Romania because I haven't proved it. I didn't prove China.
Okay.
I proved only one thing. I got it. I tell you, if I was U.S. Attorney now, I finished my investigation in 3 months. I would have had the indictment in 2. And it would be a RICO case. It'd be the Biden family. It'd go back 30 years. It'd show how James Biden monetized the office of senator, with Joe giving us the lame excuse, I don't know my family's business. That's like Kate Corleone didn't know Michael's family business. I didn't know the family business. It just happened all around me that all these people became millionaires. And then his son monetized it when he became vice president, with the excuse that a compliant press always bought, which is, I don't know the family business. No one ever bothered to put all the articles together in front of him and say, Joe, okay, on day one you didn't know them. But when you saw the second article about the corrupt relationship or the suspicious relationship, then you saw the third, and then you saw the fourth, and then you saw the fifth, and the sixth and the seventh. At what point did you kind of get it that they're selling your office and they're getting real rich and they don't have any expertise? And they started a private equity fund, and they ended up getting sued for fraud. And all of a sudden, China puts money in your son's private equity fund, where his only experience with private equity was getting sued for fraud. And by the way, when I do due diligence on a private equity fund, I look at the background of the owners. Well, one of the principals was a drug addict. Why would China, a very tough country on money, give $1.5 billion to a private equity fund owned by a recovering drug addict who was so bad a drug addict that after his father pulled strings to get him in the...
Well, he claims he hasn't gotten any money from that fund, even today, even though he owns 10% of it. Yeah.
Still, China gave them money. There's no question China gave them money. There's no question he was a partner in it. What did it just exist so that it's all online? What, it just existed to exist?
Yeah.
China made a commitment and an investment in that fund. There'd be no way China would do that.
I
also want to point out one of our other partners.
Sure.
The nephew of Whitey Bulger, James Bulger. Is our press corps so somnolent, so asleep, so in the tank for Democrats that it doesn't pique their interest? What is the son of the vice president, the stepson of the Secretary of State, and Whitey Bulger's nephew doing in the same private equity fund? Why are they in business together?
I think it's a valid question, Mr. Mayor.
It's not only a valid question, the question is answered by the fact that nobody covered it. Because
we've covered it here, so I can assure you that. But I do want to give you an opportunity to respond.
It's 3 years old.
Yeah. I do want to
Nobody
give you an
covered it at the
opportunity to
time.
respond, sir, to your press secretary from 1993, Ken Friedman. He came out. He's accused you of lying for the president and disgracing your former stature. What's your response to that?
Why is that relevant?
I'm here, press secretary.
That's gossip.
Okay.
That's
in the New York Times, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to respond.
Jeez,
Yeah.
the New York Times. Well, they're going after my divorce. The New York Times and the Washington Post are engaged in kill the messenger. Let's see if we can kill him. Let's go see if I can get a disgruntled press secretary who I never hired for City Hall, whose marriage I performed, and who my chief of staff and first deputy mayor told me was untrustworthy back then, Peter Powers. And everybody that knows him knows that he's got a big mouth and he's looking for a job. He's trying to suck up to the Democrats. How would he know if I'm lying or telling the truth about this case? He doesn't know anything about the case. He doesn't know a damn thing about the case. So he's a convenient guy to go and shoot at me. Big deal. What, they think they're going to stop me? I mean, it's so idiotic. I predicted this. When Biden's name first came up, I wasn't looking for Joe Biden. They handed me Joe Biden. Basically, they handed me Joe Biden and said, how can you guys tolerate such a corrupt vice president? And you're telling us about corruption? And look what you got. This stinks to high heaven. I said to my colleague, this is very bad, because we're going to have a hard time getting our collusion evidence out, which, by the way, I can now document with cables. We're going to have a hard time getting that out.
Have you put those cables out?
You'll see them.
Okay.
They are going to come after us with everything. So you better make sure you file your taxes on time. And you better make sure you don't use any curse words. And you better make sure you pay your bills on time. And you better make sure they can't find somebody 20 years ago who'll lie about you. But probably they will. And I'm worried for you guys because you've never been through this. I've been through it with this corrupt press corps 30 times.
I have a final question for you on the Inspector General's report, not about the IG. Do you expect it to lead to indictments? And do you think that, specifically, do you think that McCabe should be worried? Do you think Andy McCabe will be indicted?
McCabe should have been indicted a year ago. McCabe is a stone cold liar, disgrace to the FBI. Comey, I hired Comey. He's such a disappointment. The man mistreated, disgraced the FBI more than J. Edgar Hoover. To be engaged in lying to the FISA court about the Steele affidavit, to not have examined the Steele affidavit. I've concluded he knew all along it was false. You couldn't read that affidavit if you're a professional and not know it's false. You know what a crank mail is like? I get a lot of crank mail. I'm getting a lot of death threats. Look, the mafia couldn't do it a couple of times. The FARC couldn't do it. And the Islamic extremist terrorists couldn't do it. They've done fatwas, cut my throat, and 2 contracts to kill me, one for $800,000 and then one for $400,000. And the only thing I'm upset about is my value went down over that period of time, from $800 to $400. So they're a bunch of bullies. Read my book. Stand up to bullies. I love standing up to bullies. And I feel a certain sense of righteous indignation about public corruption. I'm quoted once when I was a young prosecutor saying, the only crime more heinous than selling out public office is murder. And I've prosecuted both. And I've probably done it more successfully than any U.S. attorney, at least in the last 50 years.
And so then, on this strategy, the president and the White House, and as well as yourself, you've declared war on this impeachment inquiry. It was very different. Well, I will say
they declared war on us.
Right.
This is like Pearl Harbor.
But it's very different.
They attacked us with
than cooperating with the Mueller investigation. Why that tactic this time around? First time around, John Dowd and the investigation. There are a lot of millions of documents.
Fool me once. And okay, fool me twice and I'm an idiot.
Okay.
Well, you think I'm going to fall for the fact that this isn't a frame-up? I believe that the entire first one is a frame-up that emanated from inside the Obama administration, meaning Russian collusion, and then got orchestrated with intelligence services in Italy, UK, Ukraine, and Australia. I have a pretty good idea who probably could have done that since it was with the intelligence services. And I think everything that went forward from that, being orchestrated on the ground by Peter Strzok and Comey, was a complete deliberate frame-up. This is no doubt a frame-up. That conversation, the second whistler now says he was shocked. He was sickened by the conversation. You read the conversation. I don't know, you can interpret it in a lot of ways. If this guy is shocked, he needs emotional help. I mean, there's something wrong with him. That's a ridiculous interpretation of it. First time they put out the first whistler, got the New York Times to blow it up and the Washington Post by saying the president threatened the president of Ukraine with taking away his military aid unless he investigated Joe Biden. Now you read the transcript, all 8 pages of it, no mention of military aid, no threat. The words, will you do me a favor? The guy seems very interested in it. The guy seems like he wants to investigate it for his own purposes. Nobody ever quotes what Zelensky says in there, which you're absolutely right, Mr. President. We got to straighten this out. The main body of the conversation is about corruption in Ukraine and about other geopolitical matters. 4 lines on Biden, 4 lines out of over 1,000 lines, and they want to say that was the main focus of the conversation. They're lying. And there's nothing in that conversation that's shocking, unless you're some kind of a lying idiot who is selling himself out to a law firm that's offering money. I mean, nobody reports this. That Compass Bumpus law firm, whatever the hell the name of it is, was offering money on its website if you were going to inform. So you got help with mortgages, you got help with expenses, you got help with housing, you got other help if you needed it, right on the website. So you come in and you press the button and you get money. And it was quite obvious who they wanted information on. They wanted information on Trump. The guy running it worked for Hillary, and he worked for Schumer. I wonder if you went in there and you said, man, I can really blow up this Biden thing. Giuliani's absolutely right. I got 2 tape recordings, but I want to be a whistleblower. What do you think they would have done? You think they'd have given him the mortgage payment or you think they'd have tossed him out on his ear and gone and leaked it somewhere?
Well, we'll have to leave it there, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much for joining us.
Don't fool me. You put out advertisements like that, it reminds me of the old ambulance chases.
Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Mayor. Really appreciate it. Thank you, sir. We'll have more Rising for you after this.